Censorship is a tricky thing. The line between artistic freedom of speech and the need to protect the common good are at odds every day. But some people have begun to question the agenda of some behind-the-scenes experts. Do the ideas on screen match up with the story they're supposed to tell? This isn't meant to be a discussion on politics or the state of the world, but rather the behind-the-scenes decision-making that goes into some Hollywood movies. Everyone wants to look good on the big screen, and the government is no exception. Here are 10 famous movies that were altered by the government. Goldeneye. Whenever a new actor takes on the role of James Bond, fans of the franchise always wonder if they've got what it takes to embody the iconic super spy. And after Timothy Dalton passed the torch to Pierce Brosnan, people got excited. His first appearance as 007 was in 1995's Goldeneye. The movie spawned one of the most iconic video games of all time and contained some of the best moments in the character's big screen history. But there was one scene that stood out to some members of the United States military. An unfortunate encounter with Xenia Onatopp leaves one admiral dead. In the original script, the character was American, but was later changed to Canadian for the final cut. Django Unchained. Quentin Tarantino is not exactly a subtle guy, and his movies have a unique style. Usually his vision includes troves of well-crafted dialogue mixed with a few bloodbaths. Needless to say, audiences have come to expect a certain level of violence and gore when heading into the theater to see his latest work, except in China, where the government's strict film regulations clashed with the release of Django Unchained in 2012. The authorities pulled it from rotation on the same day it was released and made some changes. The censored final cut is about 3 minutes shorter than the original, and it's missing some of its nudity and violence. Iron Man 3. Robert Downey Jr.'s take on Tony Stark is officially legendary and expanded the character's fan base tenfold. He's been in a ton of movies over the last decade, and Iron Man 3 was one of the most successful. Legions of fans think the film is perfect just the way it is, but before it was released in China, the authorities did a little editing. Usually censors remove footage, but in this case they actually added a couple of minutes to the movie, and the way they used their time was kind of odd. There were a few changes, but the most obvious one is a scene where they advertise a real-world drink as the reason for Iron Man's stamina. Zero Dark 30. Oftentimes when filmmakers take on a delicate or complex subject matter, they consult with an expert. It's a lot of pressure and they have a responsibility to be accurate when handling real-life events. But some argue that a line was crossed during the making of Zero Dark 30. There are opponents on both sides of the line of this issue. The movie follows a team looking for Osama bin Laden. Consulting with a team of agents from the CIA, the film was guided by their expertise in some spots and has been criticized for its use of enhanced interrogation. After its release, some audience members felt that the story was swayed to be pro-torture because of the CIA's involvement. Some fans, on the other hand, saw the scenes as finally exposing a hidden truth. World War Z. With China being the fastest growing market for movies, filmmakers are doing their part to make sure their work is up to code. Since their industry only accepts a finite amount of foreign films every year, the competition is fierce. After Brad Pitt got the rights to make the movie World War Z, he's had his eye on the ball. Most movies about zombies always give an explanation about how and where the outbreak began. In this case, it was supposed to be China. To be safe, they just nixed the conversation. It apparently wasn't enough though, and executives were still butting heads over whether or not it would be released. Based on Max Brooks' book of the same name, the film turned out to be the most successful zombie movie ever made. Pearl Harbor. Michael Bay was given all kinds of military support when he announced he'd be making a movie about Pearl Harbor. And as we mentioned earlier, filmmakers often rely on the expert knowledge of real-world people who know a thing or two about the subject matter. Since wartime history is not exactly Bay's specialty, he was advised on more than one plot point. One of his experts even had him change an entire character so the audience would like him more. Too bad it didn't work though, since the movie is considered by many to be a low point in movie making. The Hunger Games. The Chinese box office process is heavily regulated, and officials have the right to pick and choose what movies are released. They knew audiences were eagerly anticipating one installment in the Hunger Games franchise, Mockingjay Part 1, but they worried that its release would knock the entire entertainment economy off its axis. So, in an effort to encourage citizens to see domestic movies, the government stalled the film's release by a few months until the new year. Thankfully, audiences didn't have to wait too long, and Mockingjay was eventually released in 2015. Black Hawk Down. Knowledge can be expensive, and many people believe that director Ridley Scott traded his integrity for access during the making of Black Hawk Down. While working with officials on the film, the director allegedly agreed to give the insiders a first look at the film and final say about what could and couldn't be included. Many felt that the result was a glorification of America's military. Instead of seizing the opportunity to tell the story they were supposed to, some people argue that the advisors were over-involved in tailoring the final product. Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen. Here he is again. This time Michael Bay was called out for his super militarized vision in Transformers Revenge of the Fallen. Yes, obviously if giant robots began attacking the planet, the military would get involved. But some people argue their overwhelming presence throughout the movie is secretly a recruiting tactic. When asked about it in an interview, Deputy Director in the Public Affairs Department of the United States Air Force did not deny it. He stated that the primary goal of working on the film was to assist with the finer points of military life. If they get some new recruits out of it, that's fine too. Pixels. Okay, the premise that video game characters could someday attack the world and we'd be given 3 lives to defeat them sounds really cool, right? Nobody could ruin that, right? Wrong. Adam Sandler can and did in the 2015 flop Pixels. Aliens battle Earth in the form of iconic gaming characters, destroying huge chunks of it in the process. But when it came time for the aliens to blow up the Great Wall of China, the executives came to a screeching halt. Obviously, the movie was going to be at least a little crass. It is Sandler after all. But they didn't want to completely eliminate themselves from the competition for a Chinese release date. So what do you think of our list? Do you know of any other movies that were altered by the government? Tell us about them in the comments and be sure to subscribe to our channel for more videos like this one.